In the beginning, there was the game developer. He had an idea. So he took of this idea and breathed life into a prototype. The game developer saw this prototype and he said,
"Well, that was terrible."
So out of disgust, the developer casted this idea out. Yet, as the idea left his consciousness, another entered. Once again, he forged a simple prototype to test its metal. The game developer saw this prototype and he said,
Now this could work.
And thus, Powercut came into being. Hey, I'm Esso. For one of my modules, I'm making a small indie game called Powercut, and I see video I scoped that. So last week, I spent some time trying to rescope it, so I have a chance of finishing in time. And now I'm going to spend the next 4 weeks trying to finish it. So let's talk about my game, Powercut. Powercut is a Hotline Miami-inspired top-down shooter about you, an electrician, fixing your client's appliances. However, in this world, giant human-eating insects spawn in darkness and break more of your client's appliances in order to completely take over the compound and make their nest. Makes sense, right? Narratively though, through the main character, I'm gonna follow the story of a person who left their country of origin to try and get a better life for themselves and their potential future children in a richer country. I relate kinda to this story because I'm a second generation immigrant, but within this new scope of the game, this theme will barely be touched since this game is more of a prequel to the main Powercut storyline. I've been developing Powercut in 3-week sprints, and so far I'm at my 5th sprint, and that's when I'm recording this video. So let's go back to my first sprint and see what I did then. So the first thing I did was trying to get all the core gameplay mechanics inside the game. And the main mechanic, which is kind of gimmick of the game, is that the player's field of view is completely depending on light sources, while enemies could only be heard while in a light source. And in later sprints you'll see why this didn't really work in my game. Anyways, at this point in my game dev journey I've never really touched shaders, so I thought the best way to achieve this vision cone effect was to try and use the Unity 2D light system. To get this effect, I fired a series of ray casts in an arc from the player's position. If the rays then collide with something on the condition layer, they'll stop. If not, they will only be as long as the radius given. Then by passing all these ray cast hit points to the freeform light points, I managed to create this nice little effect. In the editor, like the light just refused to work in the game build, so I ended up having to scrap it. Anyway, since I still want this effect and I didn't want to play with shaders, I started playing around with the Unity rendering pipeline. CodeMonkey has a great video if you're interested. Long story short, I created the vision cone I wanted, but I should just have spent the time earlier and learn how to do a shader, because playing around with rendering has caused issues that I'm still trying to work out how to fix now. Looking back at this sprint, I'm quite impressed with what I achieved during it. I had the time to set up the AI system, while also blocking out the first level, create a weapon system, the task system, and the win and loss conditions. In this sprint I was kinda getting tired of looking at ugly placeholders, so I replaced it with ugly pixel art. Many things that I'm definitely an artist and definitely trying to say I am one, but throughout the project I did find that my bad pixel art did kinda improve in some ways. You see, now I can actually crank out a simple sprite in a couple of minutes, and it's even pretty consistent with my overall art style. Mainly because the art style is pretty consistently bad. Intermission time.
Hey, while I was editing this video, I realized something. I'm lying to you guys. I'm not planning on completing the game in 4 weeks. I'm planning on getting the feature complete in 4 weeks, which means that all the narrative is implemented, all the levels are done, and all the major features are implemented. It doesn't mean that everything is polished. So I'll still need to do a lot of bug fixing and testing before the game's actually ready. So now that's been sorted, continue watching the video while I'm enjoying my food.
This sprint was about optimization and making everything work in the game. I added a main menu and level loading so you wouldn't just be plopped into the world. Then I worked on optimizing AI. For some reason a lot of things were on update, which is fine with some things, but if you have more than 5 AIs in the world, it will completely tank its frame rate. Instead I put it on a timer using invoke repeating. This way the AI will only update maybe 4 times a second rather than updating every frame. I also added an object pool An object pool is basically a programmer's version of a recycling bin. So instead of creating and destroying objects when you don't need them, you just deactivate them, put them back in the pool. Then when we need that type of object again, we just re-enable it. And usually this is more optimized since you're not constantly reallocating memory. And since in Powercut I'm constantly creating and destroying bullets and spawning enemies, this should be more performant. Now, Sprint 4 was a really important sprint for the direction of the game, mainly because it was the first gameplay test, mainly focusing on mechanics, so I scrambled to get a build ready with everything working, and a tutorial explained the systems of my game. The core systems were that 1. You had to complete all your tasks, 2. To complete them you must turn the main power off, and 3. The light starts to fail when power is off and monsters spawn, which plays into the name Powercut. People seemed to enjoy my mechanics and thought were quite interesting, but there was some glaring issues that I needed to get fixed. The biggest issues, and probably the most heartbreaking one, was that my weakening system didn't really work. To the player, it just seemed that it couldn't hit enemies for no reason. The fault lies with me because I just programmed the system badly. The way I had it set up is that the light sources fired a raycast that made the enemy vulnerable, then the enemy waited a few seconds and then disabled that. But the system was just unreliable and there was no real indication to the player what was actually happening, so I decided to scrap it. One of the problems was that the insects were just way too rapid and people thought it was a bug, pun fully intended. I just tweaked the values and I think this solved most of the problems. However, one of the other really big problems I did see was that some people found it kinda hard to understand what was happening and what to do and where to go. Once again, this is completely my own fault. For a tutorial, the starting level I had to create is just way too open. This made it really hard to streamline information, as it was really hard to predict where the player will be and what information they will need. And even though the tasks were labeled on the screen, the players had no experience playing the game, so they wouldn't know what the tasks looked like inside the game world. And there was no real difficulty management, so the game could be really easy or really hard, depending on how lucky you were. That's fine for some games that use procedural generation and so on. But for my game, where I wanted to be a consistent linear story, that's not really what I'm going for, as I want skill rather than luck to dictate how well you do in a level. Taking all this feedback, I went back to work. I made a whole new level, which will act as a new tutorial level. It's much smaller, much more compact. This level also had a more streamlined gameplay flow, so even though I'm not limiting where the player can go on the map, I can make educated guesses as to where they would go, and at what times they will be there. That way I can give them suitable prompts at the right time because I don't want this tutorial to be too invasive. I also tweaked the actual tutorial by adding some more icons and making sure that they had a more consistent layout. Most prompts will only appear on the left side and right side of the screen. This reserves the lower middle part of the screen for really important prompts. Also, there can only be a maximum of 2 prompts at any given time just to make it more readable. I also worked on getting a really important feature to the game. Drum roll, please. The smartphone. This features how I'm going to convey the narrative. Our main character, whose name is Usas by the way, uses his phone to talk to his clients, and it's through their dialogue we learn about Usas, them, and the world itself. It was important to me to get the feel right, so I spent quite a bit of time just getting everything set up. Now, at this point I'm at the last week of the sprint. I'm doing another gameplay test. This task is meaning about game feel, and I got really good feedback. Like, people loved the way the phone felt, the shooting was very impactful, the movement was a bit light I was told, and sometimes the character kinda got caught in furniture. Other than that, it just showed that not being married to initial ideas and plans makes for a better game, since to improve the game quality and feel, you're willing to kill your darlings. Anyways, this is Powercut so far, and next time you see me, the game should be done, if I don't completely and utterly fail. So until next time, stay safe.